Picture this: you're a successful professional. You've got the education, the experience, the intelligence. Yet somehow, you keep making decisions that you later regret. Maybe you stayed in a toxic relationship too long. Perhaps you chose the wrong career path. Or you invested in something that seemed obvious at the time but turned out to be a disaster. Here's the unsettling truth: intelligence doesn't protect us from bad decisions. In fact, sometimes it makes things worse, because we're so confident in our ability to think our way through anything. This brings us to Shane Parrish, a former intelligence analyst who spent years studying how people make decisions under pressure. After leaving the intelligence world, he founded Farnam Street, one of the most respected resources for better thinking and decision-making. His insights have helped millions of people, from Fortune 500 CEOs to everyday professionals, make better choices in their personal and professional lives. In Clear Thinking, Parrish tackles a fundamental question: why do smart people consistently make poor decisions? The answer isn't what you might expect. It's not about lacking information or intelligence. It's about something far more basic: our tendency to react instead of respond. The core idea of this book is revolutionary in its simplicity. Clear thinking isn't about knowing more facts or being smarter. It's about thinking deliberately when it matters most. It's about recognizing those crucial moments when you need to shift from autopilot to intentional thought. Throughout this summary, we will explore how to transform your decision-making process. You will learn to recognize the warning signs of reactive thinking, understand the mental traps that sabotage your judgment, and build systems that help you think clearly under pressure. Most importantly, you will discover how to turn everyday moments into opportunities for better outcomes. Because here's what Parrish understood from his years in intelligence: the difference between good and great isn't talent or luck, it's the ability to pause, think clearly, and choose wisely when the stakes are highest. Part 1: The problem. We think less than we think. We live under a dangerous illusion. We believe we're rational creatures who carefully weigh options and make logical decisions. But the reality is far different. Most of our behavior is automatic, reactive, and driven by forces we barely recognize. Parrish opens with a startling revelation: we think far less than we think we do. Our brains are essentially prediction machines, constantly running on autopilot to conserve energy. This system works well for routine tasks. You don't need to consciously think about brushing your teeth or driving a familiar route. But it becomes dangerous when we apply this same automatic thinking to important decisions. Consider the executive who doubles down on a failing strategy because admitting failure would damage their reputation. Or the investor who holds on to losing stocks because selling would confirm they made a mistake. These aren't stupid people, they're intelligent individuals trapped by their own mental shortcuts. Parrish draws from his intelligence background to illustrate this point. He shares stories of brilliant analysts who missed critical threats because they were operating on assumptions rather than clear thinking. One particularly striking example involves a team that overlooked obvious warning signs of a security breach because they were too focused on defending their previous assessments. The problem isn't just professional. Think about your personal life. How many times have you sent an angry text in the heat of the moment? Made a purchase to feel better after a bad day? Agreed to commitments you later regretted because you wanted to avoid conflict? These are all examples of reactive thinking, moments where your brain's autopilot system took control. Biases compound this problem. We are wired to seek information that confirms what we already believe. We're influenced by recent events more than statistical realities. We make decisions based on how we feel in the moment, rather than long-term consequences. These aren't character flaws, they are features of human psychology that served us well in simpler times, but can sabotage us in complex modern situations. The social dimension makes everything worse. We are constantly influenced by what others think, do, and expect. Group pressure can overwhelm individual judgment. Social media amplifies our worst impulses. We make choices to fit in rather than to achieve our actual goals. But here's the key insight: clear thinking isn't about eliminating these tendencies, it's about recognizing when they are taking control, and knowing how to intervene. The first step is awareness. You need to notice when you are about to react instead of respond. This awareness creates a crucial moment of choice, the space between stimulus and response where clear thinking becomes possible. Parrish emphasizes that this isn't about becoming a robot who analyzes every decision. It's about developing the wisdom to know when to slow down and think deliberately. Because in those moments of conscious choice, we reclaim our power to shape our lives, rather than simply react to them. Part 2, Recognizing Red Flags. When to slow down. Clear thinking isn't needed for every decision. In fact, trying to analyze every choice would be exhausting and counterproductive. The key is learning to recognize high-impact moments, those critical junctures where the quality of your thinking will significantly impact your future. Parrish identifies several red flags that should trigger your clear thinking mode. First, pay attention to your physical and emotional state. When you're tired, stressed, or running on empty, your judgment becomes compromised. Your brain starts taking shortcuts, and you become more susceptible to poor decisions. This is why late-night Amazon purchases often seem ridiculous the next morning, or why heated arguments rarely lead to productive outcomes. High stakes automatically demand clear thinking. When the decision is irreversible or has significant consequences, you need to shift out of autopilot. This might be choosing a career path, ending a relationship, making a major investment, or confronting a difficult situation at work. The bigger the potential impact, the more deliberately you need to think. Time pressure is another major red flag. When you feel rushed, your brain defaults to familiar patterns and shortcuts. Salespeople know this. They create artificial urgency to bypass your rational thinking. Politicians use it during crises. Even well-meaning friends and family can pressure you into quick decisions. When someone says, "You need to decide right now," that's usually when you need to slow down the most. Strong emotions signal that clear thinking is needed. Anger, fear, excitement, envy, these feelings can hijack your decision-making process. Parrish shares the story of a successful entrepreneur who made his worst business decisions when he was either overconfident from recent wins or panicked from setbacks. Emotions provide valuable information, but they shouldn't be the primary driver of important choices. Group pressure is particularly insidious. When everyone around you seems to agree on something, it's easy to go along without thinking. But groups can be wrong, and groupthink can lead to spectacular failures. The financial crisis of 2008 was partly caused by smart people following the crowd instead of thinking independently. Watch for patterns in your own decision-making. When do you typically make choices you later regret? Some people struggle with decisions made in the morning before they have fully woken up. Others have trouble with evening decisions when they are mentally fatigued. Some are vulnerable to social pressure, while others struggle with solo decisions. Understanding your personal patterns helps you recognize when to raise your guard. Physical warning signs can also alert you to reactive thinking. Notice when your heart rate increases, your jaw clenches, or your breathing becomes shallow. These bodily responses often precede poor decisions. They're your internal alarm system telling you to pause and think. The environment matters too. Certain situations consistently trigger reactive thinking. Maybe it's family gatherings, work meetings, or social events. By recognizing these environmental triggers, you can prepare yourself to think more clearly when they arise. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate all quick decisions, it's to recognize when quick decisions are inappropriate. Most of life can and should run on autopilot. But in those crucial moments when clear thinking matters, you need to have the awareness to shift gears. Part 3, For Traps That Cloud Our Thinking. Shane Parrish has identified 4 fundamental traps that consistently sabotage our ability to think clearly. Understanding these traps is crucial because they're not occasional mistakes, they're systematic patterns that can derail even the most intelligent people. The ego trap is perhaps the most dangerous because it's so subtle. This trap springs when our need to look smart, be right, or protect our self-image overrides our judgment. We make decisions not based on what's best, but on what makes us look good or feel good about ourselves. Consider the manager who won't admit their strategy is failing because it would damage their reputation. Or the investor who holds on to losing stocks because selling would confirm they made a mistake. The ego trap turns every decision into a referendum on our worth as a person. Parrish shares a powerful example from the business world, a CEO who continued pursuing a merger that was clearly going badly because he had publicly committed to it. The rational choice was to walk away, but his ego couldn't handle the public admission of failure. The result? The company lost hundreds of millions of dollars. the ego trap is particularly vicious because it feels righteous. We tell ourselves we're being consistent or strong, when really we're being stubborn. The antidote is to separate your ego from your decisions. Ask yourself, am I making this choice because it's right, or because I want to be right? The social trap catches us when we prioritize what others think over what's actually best. We're social creatures, and the fear of judgment or rejection can override our better judgment. This trap is everywhere, from keeping up with neighbors' lifestyles to staying in jobs we hate because they impress others. The social trap is particularly powerful, because it often operates below our awareness. We think we're making independent choices, but we're actually conforming to social expectations. The clothes we wear, the cars we drive, the schools we choose for our children, all can be influenced more by social pressure than by our actual preferences or needs. Parrish describes how entire industries can fall into social traps. During the dot-com boom, investors kept funding obviously flawed business models. Because everyone else was doing it. Nobody wanted to be the one who didn't get it. The result was a catastrophic bubble that destroyed billions in value. The inertia trap is about the tendency to continue on the same path simply because it's familiar. We stick with bad relationships, unfulfilling jobs, or ineffective strategies not because they're working, but because change feels too difficult or risky. Inertia is comfortable, even when it's slowly killing us. This trap is particularly dangerous because it's passive. We don't actively choose the wrong path, we simply fail to choose a better one. The inertia trap explains why so many people live lives of quiet desperation, knowing they should make changes but never quite doing it. Parrish illustrates this with the story of a successful lawyer, who spent decades in a career he hated because he couldn't imagine starting over. The sunk cost fallacy, the idea that we must continue something because we have already invested so much, is a classic example of the inertia trap. The emotion trap occurs when we make decisions based on how we feel in the moment, rather than on long-term consequences. Anger, fear, excitement, jealousy, these emotions can hijack our rational thinking and lead to choices we later regret. The emotion trap is particularly dangerous because emotions can feel like reliable guides. When we're angry, fighting back feels right. When we're afraid, avoiding risk seems smart. When we're excited, jumping in feels natural. But emotions are temporary, while the consequences of our decisions often last much longer. Parrish shares research showing that people make dramatically different choices when they're in different emotional states. The same person might make a conservative investment decision when calm and a risky one when excited. The decision isn't based on the investment, it's based on the emotion. What makes these traps so dangerous is that they often work together. The ego trap might make you defensive about a failing strategy, while the social trap makes you worry about admitting failure publicly. The inertia trap keeps you stuck, while the emotion trap makes you reactive when pressure builds. The key to escaping these traps is recognition. When you can identify which trap you're falling into, you can step back and think more clearly. Each trap has its own antidote. For ego, focus on outcomes over image. For social pressure, remember your own values and goals. For inertia, regularly question your current path. For emotions, pause and let feelings settle before deciding. Understanding these traps doesn't make you immune to them, it makes you aware of them. And awareness is the first step toward clearer thinking. Part 4, the pause, creating space to think. In the space between stimulus and response lies our freedom to choose. This insight, adapted from Viktor Frankl's work, forms the foundation of Parrish's approach to clear thinking. The pause, that brief moment of conscious awareness before you react, is where transformation happens. Most of us live in a constant state of reaction. Something happens, and we immediately respond based on our conditioning, emotions, or social expectations. But clear thinking requires breaking this automatic pattern. It requires creating space between what happens to you and how you respond. The pause doesn't need to be long. Even a few seconds can be enough to shift from reactive to responsive thinking. In that brief moment, you can ask yourself crucial questions. What's really happening here? What am I trying to accomplish? What would be the best response? Parrish shares a story from his intelligence days about a critical moment, when a pause made all the difference. An analyst received information that seemed to confirm a major threat. The natural reaction was to immediately escalate. But the analyst paused, asked a few clarifying questions, and realized the information was being misinterpreted. That pause prevented a significant overreaction. The pause is particularly powerful in emotional situations. When someone says something that triggers anger, your immediate impulse might be to fire back. But if you pause, you can choose a response that's more likely to achieve your actual goals. Do you want to feel better in the moment, or do you want to solve the underlying problem? Building the pause into your decision-making process requires practice. Start small. When you feel the urge to check your phone, pause for 3 seconds first. When someone asks you a question, pause before answering. When you're about to make a purchase, pause and ask yourself if you really need it. The pause is especially crucial for leaders and people in high-stress positions. Parrish describes how effective leaders learn to pause before reacting to crises. They create space to think clearly about the best response, rather than just reacting to the pressure of the moment. One powerful technique is the breathing space method. When you notice you're about to react, take 3 deep breaths. This simple practice activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which helps you think more clearly. It's not about meditation or relaxation, it's about creating the physiological conditions for better thinking. Another approach is the 24-hour rule for significant decisions. When facing an important choice, especially one that feels urgent, commit to waiting 24 hours before deciding. This forced pause often reveals factors you hadn't considered, and prevents decisions made in the heat of the moment. The pause also works in conversations. When someone says something surprising or challenging, resist the urge to immediately respond. Instead, pause and ask clarifying questions. Can you tell me more about that? Or what makes you think that? These questions create space for understanding rather than just reacting. Technology can be both a hindrance and a help with pausing. The constant stream of notifications and information makes it harder to pause and think. But you can use technology to support better decision-making. Set reminders to pause and reflect. Use apps that introduce friction before you can make impulsive purchases or send reactive messages. The pause is ultimately about reclaiming control over your choices. Instead of being buffeted by circumstances, emotions, and social pressures, you become the conscious author of your responses. This doesn't mean you become slow or indecisive. It means you become intentional. Remember, the pause isn't about finding the perfect response, it's about finding a better response than your first impulse. It's about creating the space where clear thinking becomes possible. With practice, this pause becomes automatic, a built-in system for better decision-making. Part 5. Better questions. Better thinking. The quality of your thinking is directly proportional to the quality of your questions. Most people rush to find answers, but clear thinkers invest time in asking better questions. This shift in focus, from seeking the right answer to asking the right questions, is fundamental to improving your decision-making. Poor questions lead to poor thinking. When you ask, "What should I do?" you're often looking for someone else to make the decision for you. When you ask, "What's the right answer?" you're assuming there's a single correct choice. These questions close down possibilities rather than opening them up. Better questions expand your thinking and reveal new possibilities. Instead of, "What should I do?" try, "What problem am I really trying to solve?" This question forces you to step back and examine your underlying goals, rather than just reacting to immediate circumstances. Parrish emphasizes the power of, "What information am I missing?" This question is particularly valuable, because it acknowledges that you don't have complete information. And that's okay. Instead of pretending to know everything, you're actively looking for gaps in your understanding. Another powerful question is, "What would I need to believe for this to be true?" This question helps you examine your assumptions and consider alternative perspectives. It's particularly useful when you encounter information that contradicts your existing beliefs. What would someone I respect do in this situation? This question leverages the wisdom of others, without requiring you to actually consult them. It helps you step outside your own limited perspective, and consider how someone with different experience or values might approach the problem. The question, "What are the second-order consequences?" pushes you to think beyond immediate results. Every decision creates ripple effects. And clear thinkers consider these longer-term implications. The job that looks great today might limit your options tomorrow. the relationship that feels exciting now might create complications later. What would have to be true for this to be the wrong decision? This question, adapted from business strategy, helps you identify potential failure points before they occur. It's a form of pre-mortem analysis that can reveal problems you might otherwise miss. Parrish also advocates for, what assumptions am I making? This question is crucial because our assumptions often operate below our awareness. We make decisions based on beliefs we haven't examined. By bringing these assumptions into the light, we can evaluate whether they're still valid. The question, what would I do if I couldn't fail, helps you separate your actual preferences from your fears. Sometimes we avoid good options because we're afraid of the consequences of failure. This question helps you identify choices you might make if fear weren't a factor. Conversely, what would I do if I knew I would fail, can reveal whether you're choosing something for the journey or just for the destination. If you would still pursue something even knowing you would fail, that suggests it aligns with your deeper values. What story am I telling myself about this situation? This question helps you recognize that your interpretation of events is just one possible narrative. By acknowledging the story you're telling yourself, you can consider alternative interpretations that might lead to better decisions. The power of questions extends beyond personal decision-making. In relationships, asking "what do you need from me?" is often more effective than assuming you know what the other person wants. In business, asking "what would our customers say about this?" can reveal problems with products or strategies. Parrish suggests developing a personal question toolkit, a set of questions you regularly ask yourself when facing decisions. This toolkit should include questions that address your particular blind spots and decision-making patterns. The key is not just asking better questions, but sitting with them. Don't rush to answer. Let the questions work on you. Often, the most valuable insights come not from immediate answers, but from living with questions over time. Remember, the goal isn't to find perfect answers, it's to think more clearly about the choices you're making. Better questions lead to better thinking, which leads to better decisions, which leads to better outcomes. Part 6. Building systems and habits for clear thinking. Willpower is not a reliable foundation for clear thinking when you're stressed, tired, or under pressure. Precisely when you need clear thinking most, your willpower is at its weakest. The solution is to build systems and habits that support good decision-making even when you're not at your best. Systems are more powerful than goals, because they create consistent processes that don't depend on motivation or perfect conditions. A goal might be to make better decisions. A system is the specific processes and tools you use to ensure better decision-making happens automatically. Parrish advocates for decision checklists, adapted from aviation and medicine. Just as pilots use checklists to ensure safety even under pressure, you can create checklists for important decisions. A simple checklist might include: am I tired or emotional? What information am I missing? What are the potential consequences? What would I advise a friend in this situation? The power of checklists isn't in their complexity, it's in their consistency. They force you to slow down and consider factors you might otherwise overlook. They're particularly valuable for decisions you face repeatedly, like hiring employees, making investments, or choosing projects. Pre-commitment strategies are another powerful system. These involve making decisions about future situations while you're thinking clearly, before you're in the heat of the moment. Warren Buffett's investment criteria are a classic example. He doesn't decide whether to buy a stock based on how he feels that day. He has predetermined criteria that guide his decisions. You can apply pre-commitment to personal decisions too. Decide in advance how you will handle common situations that typically trigger poor choices. What will you do when you're angry at your spouse? How will you respond to unexpected work demands? What criteria will you use for major purchases? Parrish emphasizes the importance of creating cooling-off periods for significant decisions. This might mean waiting 24 hours before sending angry emails, or taking a week to consider job offers. These built-in delays give your rational mind time to catch up with your emotional reactions. Environmental design is another crucial system. Your environment shapes your choices more than you realize. If you want to make healthier food choices, design your kitchen to support that goal. If you want to be more productive, create a workspace that minimizes distractions. If you want to think more clearly, eliminate sources of unnecessary pressure and interruption. Regular reflection is essential for improving your decision-making over time. Parrish recommends keeping a decision journal where you record important choices, your reasoning, and the outcomes. This practice helps you identify patterns in your decision-making and learn from both successes and failures. The reflection process should include questions like, what did I do well? What would I do differently? What factors did I not consider? What assumptions proved incorrect? This isn't about self-criticism. It's about continuous improvement. Mental models are frameworks that help you understand how the world works. They're tools for thinking that you can apply across different situations. Some useful mental models include inversion, opportunity cost, and compound interest. Parrish suggests building a personal collection of mental models that resonate with you. These become part of your thinking toolkit, helping you approach problems from multiple angles and avoid common pitfalls. The habit of seeking diverse perspectives is another crucial system. Before making important decisions, actively seek out viewpoints that differ from your own. This might mean consulting people with different backgrounds, reading opposing viewpoints, or simply asking what would someone disagree with about this. Creating accountability structures can also support clear thinking. This might mean having a trusted advisor who can challenge your thinking, or joining a group where you regularly discuss decisions and get feedback. The key is having people in your life who can help you see blind spots and think more clearly. Remember, these systems work best when they're simple and sustainable. Don't try to implement everything at once. Start with one or two systems that address your biggest decision-making challenges, and build from there. Part 7. Emotional Mastery and Self-Awareness. Emotional mastery doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or suppressing your feelings. It means developing the awareness to understand what you're feeling, and the skills to prevent emotions from hijacking your decision-making process. Emotions provide valuable information, but they shouldn't be the primary driver of important choices. The first step in emotional mastery is developing emotional awareness. Most people are surprisingly disconnected from their emotional state. They make decisions while angry, anxious, or excited, without even realizing how these feelings are influencing their thinking. Clear thinking requires the ability to step back and observe your emotions rather than being consumed by them. Parrish emphasizes the importance of recognizing physical signals of emotional activation. Your body often knows you're experiencing strong emotions before your conscious mind does. A racing heart, tense shoulders, shallow breathing, or a clenched jaw can all signal that you're in an emotional state that might compromise your judgment. Learning to identify these physical cues gives you an early warning system. When you notice these signals, you can pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? How might this emotion be influencing my thinking? What decision would I make if I were calmer? Self-reflection helps you understand your emotional patterns. When do you typically make your worst decisions? Some people struggle with choices made when they're hungry or tired. Others have trouble with decisions made when they're elated or depressed. Understanding your personal patterns helps you recognize when to be extra careful with important choices. Parrish advocates for what he calls emotional archaeology, examining your reactions to understand their deeper sources. When you have a strong emotional response to a situation, ask yourself, what's really triggering this reaction? Is it about the current situation, or does it connect to past experiences or deep-seated fears? This self-examination isn't about psychoanalyzing yourself, it's about understanding how your history and conditioning influence your present choices. Sometimes a strong reaction to a work situation is really about old fears of failure or rejection. Recognizing these deeper patterns helps you respond to what's actually happening, rather than what you're afraid might happen. The practice of emotional regulation is crucial for clear thinking. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but rather learning to experience them without being controlled by them. Techniques like deep breathing, mindfulness, or simply naming your emotions can help create space between feeling and action. One powerful technique is the pause and name method. When you notice strong emotions arising, pause and mentally name what you're feeling. I'm feeling angry right now, or I'm experiencing fear about this decision. This simple act of naming helps activate your prefrontal cortex and reduces the emotional intensity. Parrish also emphasizes the importance of timing in emotional decision-making. Strong emotions are temporary, they will pass. The key is not making irreversible decisions while you're in an intense emotional state. The angry email you want to send, the job you want to quit, the relationship you want to end, these decisions are often better made when emotions have settled. The concept of emotional weather is helpful here. Just as you wouldn't plan a picnic based on today's storm, you shouldn't make major life decisions based on today's emotional state. Emotions, like weather, are temporary and changeable. Building emotional resilience is another crucial aspect of clear thinking. This involves developing the capacity to handle stress, disappointment, and uncertainty without being overwhelmed. Resilient people don't feel less emotion, they're better able to function effectively while experiencing difficult emotions. Practices that build emotional resilience include regular exercise, adequate sleep, mindfulness meditation, and maintaining strong social connections. These aren't just good for your general well-being, they're essential for clear thinking under pressure. The relationship between physical and emotional health is particularly important. Poor physical health, whether from lack of sleep, poor nutrition, or inadequate exercise, compromises your emotional regulation abilities. Taking care of your body is taking care of your decision-making capacity. Parrish also discusses the importance of emotional honesty. Sometimes we make poor decisions because we're not honest with ourselves about what we're feeling or what we want. We might stay in situations that don't serve us because we're afraid to admit we're unhappy. We might make choices to please others because we're afraid of conflict. Clear thinking requires the courage to acknowledge your authentic feelings and desires, even when they're uncomfortable or inconvenient. This doesn't mean being selfish or ignoring others' needs, it means being honest about your own needs, so you can make choices that are sustainable and authentic. Remember, emotional mastery is not about perfection, it's about awareness and progress. The goal is to become more skilled at recognizing when emotions are influencing your decisions, and developing the tools to think clearly even in emotional situations. Conclusion: turning insight into practice. As we reach the end of this journey through Shane Parrish's Clear Thinking, it's important to remember that knowledge without action is simply entertainment. The insights we have explored about reactive thinking, mental traps, the power of the pause, and the importance of systems only have value if you put them into practice. Let's recap the key insights that can transform your decision-making. First, recognize that most of your thinking is automatic and reactive. You're not as rational as you believe. And that's okay. The goal isn't to become a perfectly logical robot, it's to notice when you're about to react and choose to respond instead. Second, understand the 4 traps that consistently sabotage clear thinking: the ego trap that makes you protect your image over pursuing truth, the social trap that prioritizes others' opinions over your own judgment, the inertia trap that keeps you stuck in familiar patterns, and the emotion trap that lets temporary feelings drive permanent decisions. Third, master the pause, that crucial moment between stimulus and response, where choice becomes possible. This doesn't require meditation or complex techniques. Often, 3 deep breaths or a simple question like, "What am I trying to accomplish here?" is enough to shift from reactive to responsive thinking. Fourth, ask better questions. Instead of rushing to find answers, invest time in understanding what you're really trying to solve. Questions like, what information am I missing? And what assumptions am I making? Can reveal blind spots and open new possibilities. Fifth, build systems and habits that support clear thinking. Don't rely on willpower alone. Create checklists, establish cooling-off periods, design your environment to support good choices, and regularly reflect on your decision-making patterns. Sixth, develop emotional awareness without emotional suppression. Learn to recognize when emotions are influencing your thinking. And develop the skills to make important decisions when you're calm and centered. Seventh, balance speed and deliberation appropriately. Not every decision needs deep analysis, but you must recognize when slow, careful thinking is required. The key is matching your decision-making process to the importance and reversibility of the choice. Finally, remember that clear thinking compounds over time. Small improvements in decision-making create dramatic differences in life outcomes. Every choice is an opportunity to strengthen your capacity for future clear thinking. As Shane Parrish reminds us, the best decisions come when you slow down and see clearly what really matters. This isn't about knowing everything or having all the answers. It's about having the wisdom to know when to pause, the courage to question your assumptions, and the discipline to choose long-term value over short-term comfort. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. Make them count. Think clearly, choose wisely, and build the life you actually want, rather than the one that simply happens to you. The journey toward clear thinking starts with your very next decision. Will you pause and think, or will you react? The choice, as always, is yours.